The night my mother told me to get out of the house I bought, I thought I'd misheard her. I'd just come back from a long day in Manhattan, dropped my bag by the door, and she was already waiting in the living room with that tight, nervous smile. "We need to talk," she said, and it went downhill fast. She started with how my brother deserves a real fresh start, how he's been through so much, how family helps family. Then she looked me straight in the eye and said I should move back to my apartment in the city full time so he could move in here. When I reminded her that I paid the down payment, that my name is the only one on the paperwork, she didn't even flinch. "You're hardly here, Madison. You have your big career, your life in New York. Your brother has nothing. Don't be selfish." That word hit harder than anything else. Selfish. For buying my parents a safe, beautiful home and letting them live here practically rent-free. I noticed then she had already gathered some of my things by the door, like this decision had been made days ago. She held out her hand for my keys and added, almost casually, that they were planning a housewarming soon to celebrate finally getting the home we always dreamed of. I didn't go to that party. I saw it online instead. Photos of my mother and my brother grinning in my kitchen, grilling in my backyard, captions about our dream home after years of hard work, and comments asking if I had helped at all. My mother replied, "Not really. She was never around. So tell me, what would you do if your mom kicked you out of a house you paid for, then told everyone you never helped?" Stick around, because that was the moment I decided karma needed a little push. Growing up, it should have been obvious that the night my mom kicked me out of my own house was just the final chapter of something that started a long time ago. I grew up in a quiet New Jersey suburb, the second child no one really planned for. My older brother Tyler was the star from the moment he could walk. My mom, Karen, called him her miracle, her champion, her ticket to a better life. My dad, Mark, just went along with whatever made her happy, and most of the time, that meant revolving our whole world around Tyler. When I was little, Saturdays meant sitting in cold metal bleachers, watching my mom scream herself hoarse for him at football games, shaking cowbells and waving homemade signs with his jersey number. After the game, there would be big parties, themed cakes, new gear, everyone telling Tyler how talented and special he was. I'd be the kid holding empty cups and picking up trash, the one who got a quick, "Good job, honey," almost by accident when no one had anything else to say. When Tyler got his first car at graduation, a shiny used sports car my parents could not really afford, my mom cried happy tears in the driveway. When I got into the honor roll, she said, "That's great, Madison. Can you help me clean up the garage later? Your brother needs space for his equipment." It was always like that. He was the future. I was the backup plan. The only people who seemed to see me were my grandparents on my dad's side, Evelyn and George. They lived a few blocks away and would invite me over after school on the nights my parents were busy shuttling Tyler to practice or meetings with coaches. My grandfather would sit me at the kitchen table with the newspaper and point to the financial section, explaining basic things like saving, interest, and why people bought stocks. My grandmother taught me chess and told me, "You have to think 3 moves ahead, honey, especially when everyone keeps underestimating you." At school, I was the kid who signed up for the business club and the math team, the one who stayed late to help with fundraiser spreadsheets while everyone else took selfies in the parking lot. I started to realize something important. Numbers didn't play favorites. They did not care that Tyler was the golden boy, that my mom wore his Letterman jacket like a second skin. The numbers only cared if you paid attention and did the work. While my mom was busy telling everyone that Tyler was going to make it big and take care of all of us one day, I was quietly building something else. A life where I wouldn't have to beg for a seat at my own family's table. I just didn't know yet how far my mom would go to keep feeding the fantasy that her golden son could do no wrong, even if it meant lying to herself, wrecking their finances, and eventually pretending I never helped at all. By the time I hit my mid-teens, the gap between how my mom treated Tyler and how she treated me wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a routine. Tyler had gone off to college to study marketing, and my mom talked about it like he'd been drafted into the NFL. Every phone call from him was a major event. She'd put him on speaker, pace the kitchen, and hang on every word as he bragged about parties and networking with the right people. When the call ended, she'd sigh and say, "Your brother is really going places, Madison. Just wait. He's going to change everything for this family." Meanwhile, I was a junior in high school taking AP classes, running numbers for the school fundraiser, and working part-time at a local coffee shop to save up some money. Nobody made signs for that. After Tyler graduated, things went downhill fast. He bounced between a couple of sales jobs, then announced one night at dinner that he was meant to be an entrepreneur. He'd found a can't-miss opportunity to open a bar with some friends near his old campus. My mom lit up like it was Christmas. "This is it," she told my dad. "This is his big break. We have to help him." Help meant draining most of their savings and taking out a line of credit against the house. My dad looked worried, but he signed the papers anyway because saying no to my mom was not something he knew how to do. I watched all of this from the edge of the room, silent, wondering how many spreadsheets I'd have to fill to match the money they threw at my brother with one impulsive signature. The bar failed within a year. Tyler drank more than he worked, his partners bailed, and suddenly the big break was just another bill. My mom didn't blame him, of course. She blamed the economy, the location, his lazy partners, anything but her golden boy. Then she started cutting corners. No more small vacations, no more repairs unless the roof was literally leaking. She picked up extra shifts at a local office, and my dad started doing side jobs on weekends. I picked up more hours at the coffee shop and started tutoring younger students in math. On top of that, I was doing most of the housework. "Tyler is under so much stress," my mom would say, while handing me a list of chores. "Let him focus on getting back on his feet. You're good with numbers. You'll be fine." It was wild. Their son had blown through savings and credit, and somehow I was the one expected to quietly hold everything together. When I brought home a certificate for a regional math competition, my mom glanced at it and said, "That's nice. Hey, do you have time to clean out the garage this weekend? Your brother might need to store some things from the bar." I'd stand out there surrounded by boxes of promotional cups and bar stools, thinking, how do you love someone so much you're willing to set your whole life on fire for them, and at the same time barely notice the kid who's actually trying to help? The only time I felt truly seen was when I was with my grandparents. My grandfather would check in on my savings account and tell me, "You're doing what your parents should have done. You're building a cushion. Don't let anyone guilt you out of protecting yourself." My grandmother kept reminding me, "You don't have to stay in a place that doesn't value you just because you were born into it." Their words stuck with me when I started applying to colleges. I filled out every scholarship form I could find, stayed up late writing essays while my mom scrolled through Tyler's latest business ideas on her phone. When the acceptance letter from NYU came, with a financial aid package and a scholarship for students in finance, I sat at the kitchen table shaking. I had a way out. My mom's reaction? "New York is so far. Who's going to help us if you're gone? What about your brother?" For the first time, I didn't swallow my answer. I just said, "Maybe this time he can help you," and mailed my acceptance off anyway. I thought moving to New York would put all that dysfunction behind me. I had no idea it was just setting the stage for the biggest betrayal of all. New York felt like another planet compared to my parents' house in New Jersey. At NYU, nobody cared that my brother used to be a high school football star, or that my mom still talked about his glory days like they were yesterday. What mattered was whether you showed up, kept up, and could handle the pressure. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just the quiet kid in the background. I was the one getting picked for opportunities. I threw myself into my finance classes and landed an internship at a small firm in Manhattan my sophomore year. It wasn't glamorous at first. I spent a lot of time in a corner cubicle cleaning up spreadsheets, organizing reports, and running tiny pieces of analysis that probably no one would remember. But people noticed that I never missed a deadline, never turned in something half done, and always asked smart questions instead of trying to impress with buzzwords. Inside that office, I wasn't Tyler's little sister. I was just Madison. Every time I walked past the skyscrapers on my way to work, weaving through crowds of people who all looked like they were going somewhere important, I felt this quiet, steady sense of rightness. This was where I belonged, in a place where effort actually counted. Back home, the story was very different. Tyler had moved back in with my parents after the bar failed, and suddenly, he was on to his next big idea, an e-commerce app. He pitched it like he was in a startup documentary, lots of big promises and buzzwords about disruption and brand experience. My mom ate it up. She started talking about investors and getting in early, like she was some seasoned venture capitalist. My dad, as always, just looked tired. I'd call on Sundays and hear the hope in my mom's voice when she talked about how this one is going to change everything. When I asked whether they were still paying off debts from the bar, she brushed it off. Debt is normal, Madison. You have to spend money to make money. My stomach twisted because I knew she didn't really understand what she was repeating. She just wanted to believe her son was still special. During my last year of college, everything shifted. My grandparents, Evelyn and George, both passed away within months of each other. They were old, and we knew it was coming, but it still felt like the floor dropped out from under me. They were the only ones who had consistently seen me, believed in me, and told me I was more than a supporting character in my own life. After the funeral, the lawyer read their will. They left a little something to my dad and some family keepsakes to my mom. Then he turned to me and said they had set aside a savings and investment account in my name, built quietly over years. Around $100,000. There was a letter from my grandfather, handwritten and neat, tucked in the folder. It said, "Use this to build something that belongs to you, not to rescue people who refuse to save themselves." I sat in my tiny dorm room that night and cried because it felt like they were still looking out for me from beyond the grave. I graduated from NYU with honors and a job offer from the firm I'd interned at. Now a full-time analyst position in Manhattan with a solid starting salary and a clear path upward. I took the job, moved into a modest one-bedroom in Brooklyn, and started doing exactly what my grandparents had taught me. I built. I maxed out my 401k, opened an IRA, invested in index funds, and grew that inheritance instead of blowing it on shiny things. Meanwhile, Tyler's app went exactly where his bar went. Nowhere. He burned through the small investor money he had, then turned right back to my parents. I found out through hints and half-finished sentences on phone calls that my mom had cashed out more of their retirement accounts and taken on even more credit to keep him afloat. "It's just until the app takes off," she would say, like reading from a script. My dad's hair was grayer every time I saw him. When I drove out to visit, I noticed things my mom didn't talk about. Late notices on the counter, the way she snapped when I asked if everything was okay, the way my dad's shoulders slumped a little more each time Tyler mentioned one more loan or just a little help. One night, after Tyler had stomped off to the basement because someone dared to question his latest idea, my dad and I sat alone at the kitchen table. He rubbed his forehead and said quietly, "Your mother believes in him so much she's willing to bet the entire house on it." I asked him if that was literally true. He hesitated, then nodded. "We've used almost everything we have. There's not much left." I drove back to Brooklyn that night with my hands gripping the steering wheel too tight, listening to the city traffic and doing mental math. I had my career, my savings, my grandparents' gift. I was finally in a place where I didn't have to worry about the lights staying on. But my parents were one bad month away from losing the roof over their heads because they couldn't stop chasing Tyler's potential. I knew I couldn't fix their choices. I also knew I wasn't ready to stand by and watch them get crushed by the fallout. I just didn't realize that trying to help would give them the perfect excuse to erase my contribution and hand everything, including my generosity, right back to my golden brother. The breaking point came on a rainy Sunday when I drove out to New Jersey and found my mom at the kitchen table surrounded by unopened envelopes. She jumped when she saw me, then tried to sweep the stack into a pile like she was just organizing coupons. I picked one up anyway. It was a notice from the bank about delinquent payments and possible foreclosure proceedings. The house I grew up in, the one my parents had refinanced over and over to fund Tyler's big dreams, was hanging by a thread. My dad sat in his usual chair, staring at his coffee like it might have answers. Tyler was nowhere to be seen. "It's just a scare tactic," my mom said too quickly. "We'll catch up. Your brother is close to landing something big. Once that happens, all of this will go away." I looked at my dad. He didn't argue with her, but he didn't nod either. He just looked tired in a way that went deeper than needing a nap. I knew I couldn't fix every bad decision they'd made, but I also couldn't sit there and watch them lose everything. I drove back to Brooklyn and spent that night doing what I do best, running numbers. I added up what they owed, what it would cost to save the old house, what it would take to move them into something smaller, safer, and sustainable. Throwing money at their current mortgage would just keep them on life support a little longer. Buying them a new place, in my name, would at least give me some control. A few weeks later, I asked them to meet me at a quiet diner halfway between my apartment and their town. I slid into the booth across from them and laid out my plan. "You're drowning," I said, no sugarcoating. "The bank notices aren't going to stop. If you keep hanging on to the house just because it has history, you're going to lose not only the house but everything else too." My mom opened her mouth to argue, but I kept going. "I've been saving. I have money from my job and from Grandma and Grandpa. I found a smaller place, a single-story bungalow a few towns over. Nice neighborhood, low property taxes, easier to maintain. I can buy it outright with a manageable mortgage and some of my savings. It'll be in my name. You two can live there, treat it as your retirement home, and we stop this cycle before it destroys you." They stared at me like I'd spoken another language. My dad was the first to respond. "You'd do that?" His voice cracked on the last word. My mom's eyes filled with tears, the emotional kind she usually saved for Tyler. "You'd buy us a house?" she whispered, like the idea was unthinkable. Part of me wanted to say, "I'm not buying it for you. I'm buying it to keep you from crashing." But I swallowed that and nodded. "Yes, on one condition," I added. "It stays in my name. I handle the mortgage, the taxes, the big repairs. You pay what you can for utilities and day-to-day stuff, but we're done with loans for big ideas. No more cashing out retirement, no more second chances on bad business plans. This is it." My mom wiped her eyes and grabbed my hand. "You're an angel, Madison. You're saving us," she said, and for the first time in my life, I saw her look at me with something close to genuine gratitude. We closed on the bungalow a few months later. It was cute in a simple way. A small front porch, a tidy yard, an open living room, and a backyard with enough space for my mom to plant all the flowers she'd pinned on Pinterest, but never had the money or energy to buy. The commute to the nearest grocery store and hospital was easy, and the street was full of retirees walking dogs and kids on bikes. It was exactly the kind of safe, quiet place my grandparents would have chosen for themselves. I stood in the empty living room on move-in day and handed my parents a pair of keys. "This is your fresh start," I said. "Don't waste it." My dad hugged me like he didn't want to let go. My mom immediately started talking about paint colors and where to put the couch. Tyler showed up late, carrying one box and a lot of opinions. "Nice place," he said, looking around like he was evaluating a potential listing. "Kind of small, but it has potential if you upgrade the kitchen and maybe add a deck. Did you guys finally get a good deal?" My mom jumped in before I could say anything. "Your sister helped," she said vaguely. "It's a family effort." I let it go in the moment, but a little alarm bell rang in my head. Over the next few weeks, the language my mom used started to shift. At first it was, "Madison found us a house." Then it became, "We finally got the house we deserve." Eventually, when she talked to neighbors, I heard her say, "We bought this place after all the sacrifices we made for our kids." Tyler started dropping hints too. "So, where am I supposed to stay when I need a break from the city?" he asked one afternoon, casually leaning in the kitchen doorway. "You've got your own place, Mads. Mom and Dad are here. It just makes sense for me to crash in the spare room." My mom chimed in. "It would be good for him to have a stable base. You're so busy with work and your life in New York. You hardly ever use your old room." I reminded her, gently but firmly. "This house is in my name. I bought it for you and Dad to live comfortably. That's it." She gave me that tight smile I knew too well and said, "Of course, of course. You're such a blessing." But as she walked away, I heard her whisper to Tyler, "Don't worry. We'll figure something out." I told myself I was overreacting, that I was just sensitive because of our history. I wanted to believe this time would be different, that my mom wouldn't twist my help into something that erased me completely. Then she called one evening and said, almost cheerfully, "We're thinking about having a housewarming party. You know, invite family and some of Tyler's friends. Celebrate finally getting our dream home." Our dream home. The word sat heavy in my chest. I didn't argue. I just said, "Sure, Mom. Let me know the date," and hung up, not realizing they were already planning a celebration where I would be written out of the story entirely. The first sign that something was off was how vague my mom suddenly got about the housewarming. She'd been so excited on the phone when she first mentioned it, going on about decorations and food and finally celebrating our dream home. But when I asked for a date, she kept saying, "We're still figuring it out. I'll let you know." Weeks passed, and every time I brought it up, she changed the subject. Work got busy, as always, and I let it slide, telling myself maybe they were still settling in, maybe money was tight, and they needed to wait. Then, one Friday night after a late meeting, I was zoning out on my couch in Brooklyn, scrolling through my phone, when Tyler's post popped up. He'd tagged my mother, a bunch of his old friends, and even a few people I vaguely recognized from our hometown. There he was in my kitchen, leaning against my island, beer in hand, a big grin on his face. The caption read, "So grateful to finally move my parents into our dream home after years of hard work and sacrifice. Couldn't have done it without persistence and faith. Here's to new beginnings." There were photos of the backyard strung with lights, a grill smoking in the corner, people laughing over plates piled with food. Another shot of my mom and Tyler holding up a cheesy "Home Sweet Home" sign, standing in front of the house like they had just signed the mortgage themselves. I felt my heartbeat in my throat as I scrolled through the comments. People were writing things like, "You're such a good son," and "You're really stepping up for your parents, man," with heart emojis and clapping hands. One comment near the bottom made my stomach flip. Someone I didn't recognize had written, "Did your sister help too? Thought she was doing well in the city." Tyler hadn't answered yet, but a few minutes later a notification popped up. My mother had replied from her account. "Not really. She's never around. Always busy with her own life. This was mostly on us and Tyler." I stared at those words for a long time. It wasn't just that she lied, it was how easily she erased me, how comfortably she slid me out of the story in front of an audience. That was the moment something in me went from hurt to ice cold. Without thinking too much about it, I grabbed my keys and my bag and headed for my car. The drive out to their town felt shorter than usual, my thoughts so loud I barely noticed the traffic. When I turned onto their street, I could already see the glow from the backyard and hear music drifting over the fences. Cars lined both sides of the road. People were laughing, walking in with bottles of wine and gift bags. I parked a little farther away, out of the direct line of sight, and walked up the sidewalk like I belonged there. Because I did. More than anyone else at that party, I belonged there. I slipped through the side gate into the backyard. No one noticed me at first. They were too busy posing for group photos and balancing paper plates. I saw Tyler at the grill, holding court like some kind of hero, telling a story about grinding and never giving up on family. My mom stood near the patio door talking to a small group of neighbors. "We're just so proud we finally bought this place after everything we've been through," she was saying, her hand resting on her chest like she was in a commercial. "We sacrificed a lot, but it was worth it. This is the home we always dreamed of." Someone asked, "Did your daughter help any with this? She's in finance, right?" My mom gave this little laugh that made my skin crawl. "You know how it is," she said. "She has her Wall Street life. She never really helped. Tyler's the one who stepped up for us." I didn't even feel myself move. 1 second I was standing at the edge of the yard. The next I was walking straight into the middle of the circle. The conversations around us dimmed, then stopped altogether. "That's funny," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised me. "Because as far as I remember, I'm the one who wired 6 figures to make this house happen." Every head turned. My mom froze, color draining from her face. "Madison," she said sharply, like she'd caught me doing something wrong. "What are you doing here?" "Oh, I don't know," I replied. "Just visiting the house I bought, watching the party I wasn't invited to, listening to you tell people I never helped." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Tyler walked over, trying to play it off. "Come on, Mads, don't be like that. This is just a celebration. No need to make it weird." I pulled a folded envelope from my bag and held it up. "You know what's weird?" I said. "Throwing a housewarming party for a house you don't own. This is the closing statement from the bank. See whose name is on it? Mine. There is no one else on the deed. No co-owner. No co-signer. Just me." My dad had been hovering near the back door. He stepped closer now, his face a mix of shame and something like relief. He knew. He'd always known. My mom tried to regain control, her voice trembling. "We're your parents," she said. "We deserve a home. Your brother needs a stable place to get back on his feet. You have your career, your apartment, your opportunities. You were just pretending," I cut in. "Pretending you bought this. Pretending Tyler sacrificed anything other than your credit scores. Pretending I never did a thing, so you could keep feeding this golden child fantasy you've had since he was 17. I turned slightly, addressing the crowd now. "I bought this house because they were about to lose the old one chasing his failed businesses. I put it in my name so they'd have a safe place to live. I was going to sign it over eventually, when I knew they were stable. I don't feel that way anymore." The air in the backyard felt heavy. Someone set down their drink. A woman near the back murmured, "Oh my God," under her breath. Tyler stepped closer, his jaw clenched. "You're being dramatic," he said. "You can't just show up and humiliate Mom like this. This is a family matter." I looked him dead in the eye. "You're right," I said quietly. "This is a family matter. And that's exactly why I'm done letting you and Mom rewrite reality to make yourselves look good." I took a breath and raised my voice just enough for everyone to hear. "Party's over. I want everyone who is not on the mortgage to leave my property. Now." There was this weird moment where no one moved. like they were waiting for someone to tell them it was a joke. My mom sputtered, "You can't do that, Madison. You can't just kick people out in the middle of a party." "Watch me," I said. "You've been more than happy to kick me out of things that were mine. Consider this balance." My dad put a hand on my mom's shoulder, his voice low. "Karen," he said, "we need to let them go." That seemed to break the spell. People started gathering their things, muttering apologies, avoiding eye contact as they slipped past us toward the gate. Tyler looked at my mom like he expected her to fight harder, but she just stood there, shaking. Within minutes, the backyard was almost empty. The string lights still glowed. Abandoned plates sat half-eaten on the table. Music played softly from a speaker with no one left to listen. It looked less like a celebration and more like the aftermath of a storm. My mom finally found her voice. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "You're turning your back on your own family." I felt strangely calm. "No," I said. "I'm turning my back on being used. There's a difference." I pocketed the envelope, turned off the music, and started blowing out candles one by one while Tyler and my mother watched. For the first time in my life, they didn't look powerful or special. They just looked small, standing in a house they'd tried to claim but never actually owned. As I locked the back door that night, I knew one thing for sure. This was the last time they would ever get to rewrite my story without consequences. What came after, when the dust settled and the truth spread, would be the part they never saw coming. The fallout didn't hit all at once. It came in waves, each one stripping away another layer of the story my mom had been telling herself for years. The morning after the party, I drove back to the bungalow with a folder full of documents and a decision I'd already made. My parents were in the kitchen, silent, like they'd been sitting in that awkward, echoey quiet all night. Tyler was gone. I guess even he didn't want to be there for the hangover. I sat down at the table and laid everything out. The deed, the mortgage statement, the bank letters from their old house that I had pulled out of the stack of junk mail, a basic breakdown of their debts. "Here's where we really are," I said. "You are months behind on payments for the old house. That foreclosure notice isn't a scare tactic. It's a countdown. This place," I tapped the deed, "is in my name. I bought it with my money. I gave you a home so you wouldn't end up on the street. Last night you threw a party in my house, pretended you bought it, and told people I never helped." My mom flinched like I'd slapped her. "I was just embarrassed," she snapped. "We don't need everyone knowing our business." What was I supposed to say? That our daughter had to rescue us? "You didn't have to lie," I said. "You didn't have to erase me." My dad didn't look at me or her, just stared at the paperwork. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. I took a breath. "Now I stop doing what Grandpa told me not to do," I said. "I stop rescuing people who refuse to save themselves. I'm selling this house." My mom's head snapped up. "You can't do that," she said, voice rising. "We have nowhere to go. You can't just throw your parents out on the street." "I'm not throwing you on the street," I said. "I'm giving you 90 days. You can sell what you don't need, find an apartment you can actually afford, talk to a financial advisor, do whatever you need to do as adults. I'll even pay your first month's rent and security deposit, but I am done being your safety net while you rewrite me out of your life." She called me heartless, ungrateful, accused me of letting money change me. I let her rant, because for the first time her words didn't stick. They fell flat between us, exposed for what they were, tools she used to keep me in line. My dad, eyes wet, just nodded slowly. "We did this," he said hoarsely. "We made these choices. She warned us." Tyler tried to storm back in a week later, full of righteous anger about family loyalty and public humiliation. But by then, I had already met with a realtor and put the house on the market. When he said, "You can't take this from Mom and Dad," I just looked at him and said, I can't take what they never owned, and you don't get to cash in on my hard work because you finally noticed how real consequences feel. Word got around faster than I expected. People who had been at the party told their version of the story, complete with my mom's "she never helped" comment and my little reality check afterward. Some folks unfriended her quietly. A few called me to say they were proud of me for standing up for myself. On social media, Tyler went quiet for a while. When he resurfaced months later, his posts were about grinding in a very different way. Late-night shifts, humble beginnings, nothing like the glossy entrepreneur persona he'd tried to curate. The old house, the one they'd refinanced to death, eventually went into foreclosure. The bank stopped sending warnings and started sending final notices. They lost it. My parents ended up in a cramped two-bedroom apartment in a less-than-ideal part of town, the kind of complex with thin walls and overflowing dumpsters and neighbors who played loud music at all hours. My mom hated it. She complained about the noise, the lack of space for her plants, the way the light never seemed to hit quite right. She complained about everything except the choices that got her there. Tyler bounced between jobs. Nothing glamorous, mostly physical work and low-level service positions he would have laughed at in his "I'm born to be a CEO" days. For the first time in his life, no one was calling him a prodigy. He was just another guy dragging himself through long shifts and paying bills one paycheck at a time. Meanwhile, I closed on the sale of the bungalow. After paying off the remaining mortgage and fees, I took the profit and did what I always do. I invested. I boosted my retirement accounts, diversified my portfolio, set aside a chunk for a future home that would belong only to me and any family I chose on my own terms. I started therapy too, because walking away from your parents doesn't come without scars, no matter how justified it is. There were nights I cried, not because I regretted my decision, but because I was grieving the idea of the family I never actually had. My mom sent emails and left voicemails for a while, messages that swung between guilt trips and apologies that never quite admitted what she did. "We're family," she would say. "We make mistakes. Don't you think you went too far?" I never responded. I kept one email from my dad, though. It said, "I'm sorry I didn't protect you the way I should have. You deserved better. I hope you build the life your grandparents knew you could." I read that one on the days doubt crept in. Here's what I learned, and what I want anyone listening to this to hear. You do not owe your family your sanity, your money, or your future just because they gave you a last name. Love without respect is not love. It's control dressed up as obligation. Being the good child doesn't mean sacrificing yourself so everyone else can stay comfortable in their bad decisions. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away and build something better from scratch. My grandparents were right. You cannot save people who refuse to save themselves, but you can choose to save you. Have you ever had to cut off a toxic parent or sibling to protect your own life? It's not easy, and it's not pretty. But sometimes it's the only way to make sure your story doesn't end with you being the one left out of the home you paid for.